This episode is brought to you by Vital Farms. Isn't it bullshit to have to question where your food comes from? At Vital Farms, you can trace your pasture-raised eggs all the way back to the source, the pasture. On the side of each pasture-raised carton of eggs, you'll find the name of the farm where your eggs were laid. And when you look the farm up on their website, you'll get a peek at all the sunshine, fresh air, and open space the hens enjoy. Learn more and find out where to buy them at vitalfarms.com. Vital Farms, keeping it bullshit free.
This episode is brought to you by Kia's first 3-row all-electric SUV, the Kia EV9, with available all-wheel drive and seating for up to 7 adults, with a 0 to 60 speed that thrills you 1 minute and available reclining lounge seats that unwind you the next. Visit kia.com/EV9 to learn more. Ask your Kia dealer for availability. No system, no matter how advanced, can compensate for all driver error and or driving conditions. Always drive safely.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. That's the sound of switching your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling. Harness the best converting checkout and same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Stop leaving sales on the table. Discover why millions trust Shopify to build, grow, and run their business. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech23.
Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Welcome to the podcast. In this podcast episode, I talk with Cary Sparrow about upgrading your market intelligence in order to compete for talent. Cary Sparrow, welcome to the conversation today.
John, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from Minneapolis. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about upgrading your market intelligence in order to compete for talent. We all know that it's a tight labor market, especially in particularly high-skilled areas, anything STEM, anything healthcare, lots of other areas that it's just really hard to get good people. We have skills gaps everywhere. And frankly, I don't know how it is in Minneapolis, but generally speaking, across the U.S., the unemployment rate's fairly low. In Utah, I think we have like an unemployment rate of like 2.3%, which means there's basically nobody looking for jobs. So to be able to recruit good talent is a real challenge. And there's lots of positions open that organizations are really struggling to fill. So we're going to talk about how we can address that. As we get started, I wanted to share Cary's bio with everybody. Cary Sparrow is the founder and CEO of WageScape, where they provide developers, analysts, and consulting firms with access to the world's largest, most up-to-date labor market data collection. This makes the labor market more transparent, opening the doors to tremendous efficiencies and world-changing innovation. Now, there's a whole lot more that I could say about WageScape, but I'll leave that to you. Anything else you would particularly like to highlight by way of your background, context, or your company before we dive on in?
No, I mean, my own background is a little bit of kind of a purple squirrel. I, started in computer engineering and then was in the military. I was a submarine officer for 8 years. Then I got into consulting, grew into a consulting leadership role where I helped lots of companies face lots of challenges, primarily around talent and HR. And then was a corporate HR and IT executive in a big global company for a while before I founded WageScape. And all those experiences gave me the insights to say, hey, I think there's a much better way to see what's actually happening with things that touch all of our lives every day: jobs, pay, skills, who's hiring and what are they hiring for? And so that's what we built WageScape to do. Yeah,
well, very cool. And you spoke a little bit to just kind of the origin story, but maybe you could zoom in a little bit more. What served as that inspiration for WageScape? Tell us a little bit more about that background and history and how you started to develop it.
Sure. I had the benefit of working with lots of a couple hundred companies that were facing challenges that largely related to how they manage their workforce, and saw a real evolution over about 20 years where initially there was a heavy emphasis on standardizing processes and then moving those
Mm-hmm.
processes to technology and then moving that technology to the cloud and restructuring, HR functions and IT functions and everything else. Um, and they all those efforts fell short. And when I was actually in the job, where I was responsible for upgrading kind of the workforce management capabilities of an organization that had 150,000 people across almost 70 countries.
Mm-hmm.
What I came to realize is that for most larger companies, and for the economy overall, that it's really the biggest bottleneck is data. The biggest bottleneck to effectively managing your workforce is data, because data is really hard to get. It's not, when you can get it, it's not in a form that's particularly useful. And so you need people with lots of PhDs and statisticians, labor economists, compensation specialists to really kind of understand or try to understand what's happening in the market. And so I saw this firsthand, and at the same time was realizing that, well, a lot more information is now more immediately available. And if you can find a way to consolidate information from one organization to another using the same language. So a lawyer in one company means something totally different than a lawyer on the other side of the world. Or, a software programmer could be called something totally different in another company, like a software engineer or something. If you can find a way to kind of work out those differences, then there would be a lot easier way to collect all the information in real time about what's really going on. And in an economy, especially an economy that is close to $100 trillion worldwide in salaries and benefits every year. If you've got really bad information, that means you have huge inefficiencies. And so I came to saw what was happening with the state of technology and data, kind of online especially, with being kind of a disruptive approach to understanding what's happening in a very, very inefficient labor market. And this was all before the pandemic. This was back in 2014, 2015, when we started toying around with this idea. I founded the company in 2015, and put together a technology capability and a data platform that draws from online sources, lots of online, job listing sources and publicly available career profile sources to see what's actually in the market for people and jobs. What are people getting paid? And initially was able to get some good traction with some great organizations, universities, consulting firms, big corporations, names that you'd recognize. If you go out to our website, you'll see some of them. And then the pandemic hit, and the whole labor market just went completely sideways.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really a big kind of shot in the arm for us, because the kinds of intelligence that we were dealing with was exactly the kinds of things that people needed to have, but they didn't have any other sources to go to. So some of the factors that went into that. First of all, you had a very, very disparate impacts of the pandemic itself. You had some parts of, some industries where everything shut down, like all hiring stopped. Folks went home, businesses went out of business. It was horrible. We all lived through that. There were other parts of the economy, though, where it was exactly the opposite. Business demand just flooded into things like supply chain and logistics and home delivery. And I mean, the whole notion of supply chains was upended. And so you had some places where they weren't doing anything, and others where they couldn't get workers fast enough. And as a result, you started to see workers or employers finally capitulating and raising wages very, very dramatically. The kinds of things that we track, we're able to see on a daily basis what's happening with hiring and pay. So we knew what was going on, but we also were hearing everything that the traditional sources of market, like economic data and so forth, were saying. And there was a big, huge disconnect between what we were seeing was actually going on and what folks were saying, because they didn't have really any good information. It was all speculation. So you have very disparate impacts in terms of, unemployment and hiring needs. You've got wages that are going up. Then you have remote work that, very quickly companies started realizing and workers started realizing they could do their jobs from anywhere. And so companies recognized they could hire from anywhere. And so now a lot of the assumptions in terms of how you needed to see kind of the job market went out the window, because the job market, instead of being right around your, wherever you were located, was now nationwide and in a lot of cases global. So that was a real shot in the arm for us, because what we had done in the meantime was we had created the world's largest platform for real-time pay and hiring intelligence. And what that means is that, as an example, in the US, we track data from about 60 countries, but in the US, we track over 80% of all new jobs that are created in the country, right? So this is, sample sizes that are measured in millions, whereas economic, survey data and so forth usually are dealing with thousands of data points. And so they're not really that accurate or precise. Whereas ours was really precise. We could see almost every job in the country. We could see who was doing the hiring, how much the organizations were expecting to pay, what they needed, so we could see how skills were changing and evolving. And we do that every day. We go and we scan the entire market every day. So it's very real. It is as real time as you'd want or need at this stage. And so our problem at that point was not that we didn't have a solution and that we didn't have a market condition that needed the solution. Our problem was that nobody knew about us, because when I first set up the company, I wanted to just sell to other people who would incorporate our data into technology solutions or consulting solutions or research that didn't need applications. Because when you get in the application business, you tend to, focus just on those specific applications. But there's tons of folks that, people in financial services and fintech and big corporations, HR consultancies, recruiting firms, hedge funds and investment managers, banks, and folks that look at like bond portfolios and real estate prices. All of these different groups and more, media companies, sales intelligence folks, all of them and more need labor market data. And so if we had been in the business of creating applications, for all those different uses, we never would have gotten anywhere. So I wanted to be strictly just a data provider to relatively big companies. But when the 2020, late 2020, early 2021, when everything was completely out of bounds with historical expectations, we realized that we needed to get our intelligence in the hands of many, many more users than our current clients could reach. And so that's when we started building applications and other services that were direct to end user. And we've really seen demand, come up from that standpoint. But it's a totally different game now. If you're a hiring manager, this, that you're dealing with very, very different factors than you were 3 years ago. And those factors vary by job, they vary by industry, they vary by location. To give you an idea, in between 2021 and the first half of 2023, advertised wages were going up at over 20% a year across all jobs in the US, right? So when we average kind of for all different types of jobs, all different locations, how much was, year over year advertised wages going up? It was 20%. And it's still going up at that rate, which through my entire life, wage inflation has been between 2% and 4%. So this is, dramatically different. But the thing is that those wage impacts vary depending on where you are. So, in 2022, for example, while wages in general were going up 20%, if you were in certain parts of Indiana, they were going up 80%. And if you were in certain parts around the Bay Area, of all places, in California, they actually dropped about 5%. And so it's really variable now. And so it's a totally different economic environment. And in order to effectively find talent and keep the talent that you've got, you need a completely different source of insights, much more real time, much more
Yeah.
granular, much more localized.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I appreciate that. Just at the very end, as you said, real time, granularized, and localized.
yeah.
So very important. So I think I'm sure anyone listening is thinking, yeah, of course, the better data we have, the more, the better kind of decisions we can make in terms of staffing and
Mhm.
recruitment strategies and trying to compete for talent. And having that data is going to be super powerful, and frankly, it's going to put you ahead of a lot of organizations that don't have that, and it's not informing their strategies and their decisions. Can you talk through, maybe some specific examples of how this has helped organizations, specifically those, and particularly those who find themselves in those industries and fields where it's just really, really challenging? How have these market insights and intelligence helped them to find the right people and to be in a better place in terms of their talent strategy?
Sure, we see it across the board. So the where it's really pronounced. So it's absolutely an issue for anyone trying to hire or keep talent of any stripe. But where it's really pronounced is when your business depends on hourly workers that will literally just go down the street to a new job that's paying 50 cents an hour more. And there's a lot of that's been happening, and things are changing so fast. So we're seeing that companies that have a big hourly workforce have completely changed the way that they manage their pay. Our clients are monitoring pay constantly in the areas and for the jobs that they care about. Because all of our data comes from the public domain to start with, we don't have to hide who the hiring organizations are or who the companies are that we're tracking data from, because it's all out there to start with. They've already shared what we provide. We just do it on a massive scale and allow you to really analyze it. And so they're watching, they're not just watching the jobs in their individual markets. Sometimes they get down to, if they're in a bigger city, they get down to different sections of the city and watch what's happening to pay. They also are recognizing that who they're competing with is not who they thought they were competing with. For example, there was a client of ours who did recruiting services for a machine shop in the Midwest, mid-sized machining operation, and the traditional starting pay very, very quickly did not keep pace with the market, so that their starting workers, which were skilled tradespeople, these were machinists and fabricators, welders, spot welders, their starting pay was about the same as high demand shifts in a number of fast food restaurants, because very quickly that pay, started at like 10 an hour and broke through 15, then is now up to close to 20 an hour in certain markets. Mm-hmm. Okay. So big changes there. And these folks had no idea that was going on. And so, who you're competing with is totally different now than who you thought in the past. And so I do a lot of work with my son's school, and it's the same thing with teachers, where teachers are leaving the profession because of, yes, there's considerations around like the teaching environment and support teachers get, but really pay is a huge issue for them. And now schools are not competing with other schools for teachers. They're competing with all other careers for teachers because the pay has fallen behind so much there. So our clients have really adapted how they look at how they need to be managing pay and hiring decisions, and also how they need to be thinking about retaining their own employees, because every one of their employees is a target for somebody else. And if you're offering kind of a 5% raise to somebody, but they love where they work, then you're probably not going to get them. But if somebody loves where they work and they get offered a 30% raise or a 40% raise, it's a totally different ballgame. And so now people realize that they've got to stay on top of that, especially where they have big pay sensitive employees. There's another piece, which is just competitive insights. Folks this is surprising to all of our clients when they start working with us, is they start wanting to know what's happening in kind of their local markets and what's happening with hiring and pay and skills for the jobs they care about. But what they very quickly realize is now they've got insights into all their competitors. They can see who they're hiring. They can see who's ramping up, in anticipation of growth or opportunities, who's cutting back. So you get a level of competitive intelligence that's never been available before, at least not easily available, not without paying a lot of money to different consulting firms. So, it's still playing out. This is a relatively new capability. There's only a small handful of providers in the space, but we're seeing adoption that is just skyrocketing as more and more companies are embracing, the need for a different approach to market intelligence.
Yeah. And perhaps you've already addressed it, but are there kind of emerging new market intelligence capabilities even today than what we saw 6 months ago, a year ago, certainly 5 years ago? Where do you see things going, say, in the next year or two?
So we have kind of as a core competence the ability to collect very, very efficiently on a very large scale information from lots of different places. And so we get at when you do that, when you're able to do that, now suddenly you're able to provide insights that weren't available before. So we're seeing lots of folks are coming to us saying, in addition to what you already provide, can you get data from different sources? So merge, for example, online hiring data with government census, government unemployment data, and so forth, or merge, data from our platform and a sales intelligence platform, merge data from a whole bunch of different things. We had one come up the other day that was wanting, in one country that has strong union representation, wanted to create a much more functional source of information about union bargaining agreements. And all of our core capabilities can do that. That's where, as part of our mission, we recognize that with better quality information comes lots of opportunity for innovation, not just efficiency. And we're seeing that every day. We get people coming to us with more ideas and wanting to get more things where they've got a real commercial case for it. So I would expect that the whole nature of market intelligence is going through an evolution right now that'll last for a few years, and where we come out on the other side of it will be completely different than where we started.
Yeah, super interesting. Well, Cary, this has just been a really fun conversation. I know we've only scratched the surface. There's so much more we could go into depth on. I also know at the time I need to let you go here in just a minute. Before we wrap things up for today, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Yeah, so I would love anyone who's interested in what we're talking about, who has questions about it. You can reach me on LinkedIn. You can reach me at Cary@wagescape.com. You can go out to our website as well. So we would love to talk with you. We're super excited about the possibilities in front of us. And we're lucky that we've got a lot of forward-thinking and great brand clients that are helping to really kind of stretch the new frontier. And I would say, if this isn't something that you're thinking about right now, stand by, because you're going to start to see a lot more of it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cary. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Cary and his team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.